The changing world order. To understand what is coming at you, you need to understand what happened before you. The most surprising event that have never happened in our lifetime has similarly happened in some time ago. It's just a revolutionary process. In 1971, the US ran out of money and defaulted on its debt. We may ask, how? Well, back then, the US dollar was tightened to gold, as a value of a dollar was equal to a specific value of gold. During that time, they used that opportunity to spend a lot, so at it reaches its extreme, where a lot of money went in circulation than the amount of gold existed in the system, which the gold is tied up to. On August 15th, President Nixon went on television to tell diplomatically to the world that he has directed the Secretary Connolly to suspend the convertibility of the dollar to gold.
Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
Same thing happened in 1933, where the US dollar was also then tied up to gold. The US spent a lot more money checks than it had gold to exchange them for. And President Roosevelt announced the suspension of the gold tied up to the dollar. This principle, to understand what is coming at you, you need to understand what happened before you, becomes a reflection. Like the Roaring 20s bubble, which led to the 1930s depression. The 2007 bubble turned into the 2008 bust. There are three things which has happened in our lifetime. 1. The default of debt payments by countries even after lowering interest rates as much as 0%. 2. Internal conflicts rising within countries for the excessive growth in world gaps. For instance, there is an internal polarization. There is a left group who are of the view to redistribute wealth, and a right group who are in support to hold wealth or support the current world system. 3. There is an increasing external conflict between the rising great power, China, and the leading great power, the United States. These are some things which constitute the world order. Some call it the system. It's simply a governing system for dealing with each other in the world as a whole. There are internal orders for governing within countries. They are laid out in constitutions. And there are external orders. These are orders for governing between countries. They are usually laid out in treaties. World orders are not permanent. They change from time to time in the long run. These orders change after wars, civil wars within countries, and international wars between countries. They happen when revolutionary new forces defeat old orders. For example, after the American Revolution, the 1789 new constitution was created, which still operates till date. Russia got rid of its old order, the 1917, and started the 1992 new revolution. The current world order operating now, known as the American World Order, was formed after the Allied victory in World War II. So as the US emerged as a dominant power, it set up an agreement and treaties for how global governance and monetary system should work. During this period around 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement, the US set their currency, the United States dollar, to become the global reserve currency. So with a new monetary system and a dominant power established, a new world order begins. If you study history for the last 500 years, where there have been three reserve currencies, the Dutch guilder, the British pound, the United States dollar, and our expected future currency to come, the Chinese yuan. They each lasted for about 250 years, with 10 to 20 years of transition period. Despite the time frame of transition, it works similarly like human life. No two persons are exactly the same, but most are similar. Just like from the view, a person's life takes 80 years on average without recognizing many are much shorter and many are much longer. So, there can't be an exact prescribed time, for one should definitely stay as a leading power. Simply taken, as human life, the one who takes care and manages his health well usually lives long. Same way nations who manage their affairs well, also known as the 8 matrix, which we'll delve into soon, stays as the leading power for long. The transition period, a period of great conflict, since the leading power would never let himself down for him to be overthrown. Inspired from Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, there are 8 metrics we use to measure the ultimate power of a country. These are education, inventiveness and technological development, competitiveness in the global market, economic output, share of world trade, military strength, power of financial center for capital markets, and strength of currency as a reserve currency. So by measuring, we get to determine how strong a country it is to stand as a dominant power. In summary, a new world order begins usually after a war, where there is an establishment of a new leading power. After there is an existence of peace and prosperity, as people get used to this system, they increasingly bet on it continuing, which is by creating a lot more debt, since they've got their currency to have as a reserve currency. At the same time, this increase in prosperity redistributes wealth unevenly, which widens the wealth gap between the rich, the haves, and the poor, the have-not. Eventually, after every financial bubble, there is automatically a burst. So, as times tends to get harder, there is an increase in internal conflict between the rich and the poor, which after some time leads to revolution to redistribute wealth. This can happen peacefully or as a civil war. While countries struggle with its internal conflict, their power diminishes relative to external rival powers on the rise. When the rising power gets stronger enough to compete with the dominant power struggling with breakdowns, external conflicts happens typically in the form of war. Out of these external and internal wars come in new winners and losers. Through this, the winner tends to establish the new world order. This is a collective history on how every new world order comes up in relation to the last 500 years. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like, subscribe to us, and the continuation as a part 2 will be coming, so stay tuned. See you in the next.